Be recording.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the September meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee. Um, In attendance are voting members Diane Germain, Rich Nichols, and myself. I can't see who else is here. If there's any other ESBC members, please identify yourself.
Wayne, it's Jim McCaffrey.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. We have consultants Charlie Hay and Chris Eberly. Is there anybody else that's in attendance?
John Engler, isn't he?
Is he there or not?
Hey, Wade. I am here. I'm on mute.
All right, thanks, John. All right. Well, then let's just jump right into the agenda. Chris, why don't you start us off with an update on where we are with the construction schedule, the punch list. I'll see whether or not your items hit all of my checklists. I've got about 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah, we've moved into mostly punch list. The one exception being landscape. Punch list work is continuing at a somewhat slow pace. There's a number of items that remain on the landscape punch list that Agostini has been slowly addressing. I don't have a full update of all of those items. I mainly focused on the landscape being the big one. With regard to landscape, there the weekly meeting group, including Tape and Compass, made a point of asking Agostini to put Central Nurseries on notice that we were not satisfied that the lawns and the plantings were still not in a point to be accepted. The weather certainly hasn't cooperated with them in terms of addressing in terms of a growing season that's friendly to the landscaping, but at the same time, I think that they have lacked somewhat in their maintenance. So we requested a meeting between Central and Warner Larson to set the tone of what was expected of them for the fall growing season. Between Warner Larson and Central Nurseries, they developed a schedule of a lawn recovery approach that more or less is on the screen here, as well as an approach to trees. I went and reviewed the sites or the site conditions today, and it appears that they are on their schedule in terms of addressing things. They have spread weed killer. The weed killer is having mostly an effect on killing the weeds that were there. They have mowed recently, and you could definitely see that they had overseeded some areas. Overseeding is a hard thing to verify if you don't have the right patch of grass to look at. So I couldn't verify that all areas had been overseeded. Certainly the area around the driveway and entry, you could see seed on the ground between the grass. The overall condition that we're seeing is mostly a sparseness, especially as the weeds die out. You can see a lot of the weeds are dying out here in the foreground, but it's not filling in like we would expect to see. So we are working.
So when's we have just a limited amount of time left in this growing period, Chris. When are we going to let Central Nurseries know that they've met their commitment, or are we going to go into the spring?
I think we have to see how October pans out. What Julie told me today is that they expect to finish weeding all of the planting beds by this Friday. The trees that are going to be replaced, they can't harvest them until the first hard frost. So they have a target of mid-October to bring in the new trees and replace those. They still have that rut from the erosion control along the side of the soccer field. I'm told that will be addressed this week. So it's even looking at the list I put up on the screen. At this point, they should have fertilized, mowed the areas, and overseeded in addition to evaluating the effectiveness of the weed treatment and a few other testing aspects. So we haven't quite reached the point where you can establish whether they've been successful or not, because it's sort of in process. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Charlie.
Nope.
All right, so we'll revisit. We'll have a meeting next Thursday, not this Thursday, but a week from Thursday.
We can if you want. We had talked about those being monthly at this point, but we can certainly still do it every 2 weeks if you want.
No,
I was
that's
going to set it not the week before the next ESBC, but you know, if we assume that we're going to meet on the 20th, I was going to set it for the 8th. So it would be 10 days before this meeting in October.
I'm going to be away. Let's do it on the 16th. And I guess I would expect substantial improvement in the lawn and landscape condition by then.
You want the 16th? It's a Friday, Wayne?
Yep.
Oh, it'd be the 15th. Can you do the 15th?
The 16th.
Okay.
Friday, October 16th.
Okay. I'll have to check schedules with everyone.
I'll be driving on the 15th.
Okay.
Okay, so Chris, let's hit a number of these items. We have a bid for the vinyl floor repair. I think everybody is on the same page in terms of getting that done. Where are we with the booster pump? My last knowledge was that NB Kenny was suggesting that the check valve was on the wrong side of the pump, and that Charlie was going to review with his mechanical designer as to whether or not we should in fact move it. Where do we stand with that?
Charlie, I don't believe I've heard an update from you on that one.
Nope. I don't know. I have to check in on the status. I don't know what it is.
The last word that we heard from Agostini was the manufacturer was suggesting that the check valve move, and they were also suggesting that they add some vibration isolation while they're in the process, which would isolate the pump itself from the pad that it's mounted on. And
That's fine.
Their suggestion was that the pump was working overtime a little bit, and they were looking to get a small amount of compensation for their time to have the plumber out and a small amount of materials. The impression I got was that if it's 2 plumbers for one day, it should be less than $3,000. But I don't have hard numbers on any of that.
All right. Well, it seems to me, I think that the rubber pad isolation is really a gratuitous comment. It doesn't really address the situation. I'm more concerned with this check valve location. So Charlie, we need to get an answer on that, and if it requires moving it, certainly need to get that going. But again, I will tell you that when I was there, the noise, the vibration was coming from the electric motor and the controller, not from the pump. Whether or not it has to do with the check valve and back pressure, I don't know. But I'm wary that this is going to actually fix the problem. All right, but let's wait for Charlie to get back to us on that. Where do we stand with Warner Larson and their evaluation of the ponding, the bird baths on the tennis court, and Agostini's response with Cape and Islands?
So we haven't heard an update since Friday. To inform the committee, there's currently a situation where there's several large puddles that are occurring on the tennis courts. We've had a back and forth with Agostini and their subcontractor regarding the cause of those puddles. Ultimately, Warner Larson went out there with measuring equipment to establish how out of plane the puddles are on the overall surface. And they identified several areas that were outside of not just the the tolerance for the surfacing manufacturer, but the tolerance for the asphalt itself. So we're currently involved in a discussion back and forth with Agostini to establish how that repair will happen, and after that, who should be responsible to pay the cost of that repair. So
Well, hold on. My understanding at the last construction meeting was that it was decided that Cape and Islands was the proper party to do the repair. Julie Ellen was saying that it was unclear to her as to whether or not there was some vagueness in the spec for them, for the Cape and Islands versus Dorenzo. And frankly, that's not our issue. Who pays for it, who's responsible for it, is up to Agostini. And that should not delay.
No, I agree
the-
with you, Wayne. I bring that up in the context of a different discussion, which is that we are approaching retainage releases for a lot of different contractors. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind when there's open work like this is that we don't release the retainage for someone who may be responsible for an issue like this. So if it was a defect in the asphalt, we would not want to release the retainage of the asphalt supplier, in this case Dorenzo, until we were satisfied that their responsibility related to this issue was addressed.
Chris, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so this is specific spec for tennis courts. You're allowed to have a certain flatness that you're required to do when you do the paving. They do it by nickels when they put the surface on. They stack the nickels on top. So that should be in the spec for Cape and Island tennis. That
It is. It is.
Okay, so
And it's been measured. Rich, it's
yeah.
The spec is clear. The condition is clear that it's been determined to be out of spec. The question solely is who should fix it, and then secondarily, who should pay for it. And
no, and I understand that. So the question I ask is when we do tennis courts, usually what happens is the tennis court installer is the one that does the actually the paving contractor is required to meet a certain spec. And then if it's within a certain degree, then the tennis court installer can put thicknesses of paint on it. If it's out of spec, meaning that the pavement is not flat enough, then it goes back to the paving contractor.
So in this case, it's so all of those things are present, and I think among the design team and Compass, we have confidence that the spec is clear on this issue. I think Agostini's point that they raised is that they're not sure if they granted an exclusion to Cape and Islands when they signed the contract with them, and whether they own the patching or someone else should own the patching, which they have been unable to answer that question so far. And I think this is complicated because the asphalt was sloped per the grading plan, and so it doesn't hold water as if it was a tabletop. The amount of water that it holds is less than you would expect, but the mixture of how far off it is out of the certain increment per 10-foot level, so it's how much vertically, using a 10-foot box beam, the surface is from its surroundings, was what Warner Larson measured. And so the nickel test, I did the nickel test myself about 4 or 5 hours after it had rained overnight, and I found that it's about the 1/16 of an inch thickness in one particular area, but that area is sloped, so the actual variation in the surface is more, which is what Warner Larson's test showed. So we're currently in the point where we've said to Agostini that it needs to be fixed, and that she had requested it be a contingency item, and we rejected that. And so we're waiting for Agostini to take action on fixing it.
Chris, did you ask Cape and Islands if they can fix it with the coating on the top? If it's not that thick, they can add extra layers on there and build it up.
Yeah, but how long
They-
do the layers last?
Oh, they last as long as the tennis court. It's the same paint that they use. The paint
Yeah,
itself has
they-
the thickness. Yeah.
They use like an acrylic patching that's fairly robust. That's what they used at the basketball court. If you recall what that looked like before versus what it looks like now, they did a good job filling that, and that was a lot deeper than these indentations are. I believe they've already done some of that because this was in a worse position a while back. So they certainly could add more layers. It's a question of getting them out there to add the layers because they obviously want to be paid by someone, and that seems to be the stumbling block at this point.
Okay, going back to that. So the problem is with tennis courts is that right when you do a road or any paving, the joints are the places where they fail. So if we go in and we cut a hole in it and then we patch it, that creates a joint that could create failure. So, it may be advantageous to pay Cape and Islands to put a product on top of it, leave the paving intact, so there's no new joints, and go that way on it versus cutting out a hole and patching the asphalt. If it's if they can do that.
I think that's the approach that the approach that we're looking at is the patching approach. We haven't discussed, saw cutting out the asphalt and relayering an area or anything like that. What we've talked about thus far is the patching approach. I think that they've done about $9,000 worth of patching so far, which is what we initially reacted to, and it's just they need to do the work, and Agostini needs to direct them to do the work, and maybe I'll have a conversation with Julie tomorrow about getting that started, because the backside of this is that it gets colder, and the tennis court surfacing is more temperature.
Correct. They can't do it if it's a certain temperature. So the other question on that is, and I'm going back to the beginning. So Agostini owns a tennis court with a certain spec. So in my mind, if we didn't meet the spec, then they need to produce that court per spec because they own it. And am I wrong on that?
That's exactly the point that we made earlier, Rich. There's no question that they own the spec. The argument that Agostini is making is that there's a different spec for asphalt and there is a different one for the surface.
Sorry to cut you off, Wayne. So the question on that is, if they can't do it, then we will need to. I mean, I work in a slightly different world. I would get Cape and Islands to do the work, and I would back charge Agostini. So I'm not sure how you go about that in this world, but
I think the next step is that if Agostini isn't going to motivate them to do it, you would request that they do it under protest, and they have the opportunity to protest that that position, but you're directing them to move forward and do the work. And you run the risk that they win their protest and that you have to pay for the work. But that would be the next step, because the stalling is not helping the project overall.
And I agree on that, because I think Wayne, I'm just bringing this up, we're going to run out of temperature. And then what happens is you get into the spring, and then everybody who's been waiting for tennis courts wants to jump on the bandwagon to get theirs done first.
Chris, sorry, Wayne. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Diane.
I just want to say that they're still doing camps. The rec department is Tuesday and Thursday on the courts. So if they can't do it, I have to let them know, and they're going to lose revenue over it.
But it's a good point. It needs to be coordinated, Diane.
Yep.
But Chris, my point to you is, we discussed this on Thursday. Julie needs to have a plan. Please contact her in the morning and tell us what the plan is.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Before we leave the tennis courts, Wayne, do I have a chance or do you want me to
Oh,
wait?
yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Okay. I saw in the VIP that we got the credit for the screen, the windscreen. And today I went over and met with the tennis coach and with Chris Fogarty, who's the recreation director, because the tennis coach would like to put up a backboard. We looked at a location which would essentially take 2 of the 4 courts that are all in one tennis court space. The pickleball courts would take 2 of them out of play when the tennis team is out there training and using the backboard. That was acceptable to the rec department. I don't have a good bid. He'd given us a price which I think is way out of line, and I've sent him back to do some homework. I said it's not going to exceed the credit for the windscreen, and that's where we left it.
What's his bid?
He had a $4,000 bid, but somebody else, Mike Banks is no longer the head of the rec department or rec commission. And the new person whose name is Tim something, I don't remember, told Chris he thought 2,500 was more in line.
Well, that's, as far as I'm concerned, Diane, that's up to the whoever decides to buy the backboard.
Yeah,
Let's do this. Because we've talked about this before. I will make a motion that this committee considers spending up to the credit that we are receiving for not installing the screen, which is how much, Chris? 5,500 and how many dollars?
41.
Bring it up.
$5,541 towards the purchase of a backboard.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Diane, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rich, how do you vote?
Aye.
Wayne Clocko votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. So Diane, so it's up to Chris and Tom Ingraham to decide what they want to buy, and this committee has agreed that it will pay up to $5,541. And if that covers it, fine. And if it doesn't, they need to find the money from somewhere else.
That's exactly what I told them today.
Good. Now I'd say it's official.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Going down my list a little further, 2 drinking fountains. We had a problem with resets. Where does that stand, Chris?
I haven't heard an update on that one since it was raised. I haven't been able to get an update from Julie on that.
Okay. Have we been able to test the temperature in the rooms above the boiler room? Has it gotten to a set point that we can actually measure heat in those rooms yet?
John, can you speak to that? Is your boiler up and running?
No, our boilers aren't on yet, Wayne. If and when they are, we'll start taking readings at that point.
All right. So, Chris, would you talk to Julie about this drinking water fountain problem that John raised on Thursday?
Yep.
All right. The only other item that I saw on my punch list was gym wall pads. I guess those are being remanufactured. Anything for us to do in relation to that?
I think they were just waiting for John to be ready in the gym to have those installed. I think there was stuff in the way. That was what was discussed on Thursday.
Okay.
We're still at that same point, Wayne. I'll finalize that with Julie.
Okay. So, Chris, anything else to consider for construction progress, punch list, and closeout?
No, the next item I had on the list was the radon update.
Yep. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that?
It's really good news, so if you want to be the one who gets to share it.
Oh, yay. Why don't you do it in unison?
So
We got-
I'll
Go ahead.
go. So we completed the radon the radon construction portion shortly after our last meeting, and we contracted with GZA to come in and do a complement of tests on the radon tests within the building. We got the results shortly before the meeting tonight, and the results were consistently at, you may be able to see them on the screen.
Yeah.
I can zoom in a little bit. The results were consistently at the lowest measurable, or ever so slightly above the lowest measurable reading that the test produces.
Great.
Mostly 0.4 or less. I looked at them quick because this is very hot off the presses. I think the highest I saw was a 0.6 in a couple of rooms.
Yeah.
For perspective, just to refresh everyone's memory, 0.4 is the 4.0 is the action level. So this is a very strong validation that the system is working as intended and lowering the radon in the building.
This is 10 times less than that. 4.0 was the action level. This is 0.4. It's 10 times less. I would remind the committee, though, that this is the 3-day test, which was what we had originally done, where we got tests in the 3 from the in the general area from the 3.0 to 4 range in some areas.
Yep.
But then when we did those 60 to 90-day tests, we got higher readings. So I don't think that we have 100% confidence, but I think we're in a very good spot that the radon system that was installed is working as intended, and hopefully once they do the long-term test, we can declare victory.
That's excellent news.
It is. It would, for us to have to go back now and do some additional work would have been difficult. So this is really, it's good to be done with it at this point, now that teachers are back in the building as well.
Yep, it's good to have it wrapped up. Great job to everybody.
It worked out. Took much longer than we thought, but it worked out. Okay, we have some change orders to consider.
So on that note, the first change order to consider is actually the accounting and final cost of the radon system. If you recall, the radon system was authorized at, I'm just pulling up the exact number here. The radon system was authorized at 158,591, with a number of the components of that being not to exceed. The final accounting of that with all of the verified slips and sort of all-in number came in at 132,524. So nearly $30,000 less than the authorized amount. So there was some good savings there. We reviewed this change order, verified all of the slips, and verified the Agostini's project management costs that were within it against our records. So we're confident recommending that for approval tonight. I can go into it in more detail if the committee wishes. There's a lot in this particular one because it involves a number of subs, and a lot of it was T&M.
Chris,
No,
I thought you said 158 was
No,
the.
that was the authorized amount with the select board and this committee as the not to exceed amount.
If I read the right-hand column, I might have known that. Thank you.
I'm good, Chris. It came in under, so I think we're good.
Okay.
And I think the part that was unknown, Chris, was the T&M, especially for Agostini.
Yep.
So you verified that, and I think you indicated that you have.
Yes. So
I think we're good.
okay. Yeah, we did. We reviewed it all. The Agostini had sort of lump summed into this on-site supervision project management number.
Right.
There was some time for Julie over the course of Radon, and she accounted for her individual increments of time. There was the continuous supervision that they provided, as well as the labor that they needed to accomplish the task ended up being a lot less for everyone involved. So a lot of the not to exceed numbers came in where the scope was a little less clear because it involved being in the ceiling. The not to exceed numbers came in a lot lower than what was originally authorized.
That's why you do time and materials. So that's good. That worked out. All right. I would entertain a motion for this change order.
There's a couple others, Wayne. So if you want to do them all at once.
No, let's do them one at a time.
Okay.
I make a motion to pay GZA, is it, or Agostini?
Agostini.
Is that-
All of
pay
these are Agostini.
Agostini for change order 156 in the amount of $132,524.01.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Diane Germain, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rich Nichols, how do you vote?
Aye.
Wayne Clocko votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Because this one was approved by the select board, it exceeded our authority. I wanted to handle this separately, Chris. We can discuss these other two, and if they can be lumped together as a. Do you have those as a different change order, or?
We haven't assigned numbers to them yet, but we could do the other two credits. The other two are credits. We could do those as 34 is what I believe we're up to, and this could be 35.
Okay.
So let me just make a note of that. So the other two, if you look at the PCO log that I distributed beforehand, one is the windscreen that Diane referenced that is a credit of $5,541.26. And the other is the remaining credits from some allowances that were in the concrete subcontractors contract. And so liquidating the remaining allowance of $1,815.37.
So the total of those is.
I forgot to add that up because I was thinking we were doing them all at once.
7,356.63. Is that right?
7,356.63. Correct.
All right.
I make a motion that we approve a credit for change order number, whatever it is for,
35.
sorry.
34.
34. Okay, now I already forgot the number of the credit, sorry.
$7,356.63.
Exactly, just like Chris said.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Diane Germain, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rich Nichols, how do you vote?
Aye.
Wayne Clocko votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right.
So we'll
Good.
do those two. It's 157 and 158. We'll do those as change order 34, and the other one is 156, and we'll do that as owner change order 35.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Good. And that concludes the change orders, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the next was community communications, which I don't have anything for, but I don't know if Diane has anything.
Nope, that would make two of us with nothing.
I think at some point in the future, and this kind of relates to just general community finance, we're getting to the point, and probably before the next town meeting, we should at least give an indication of where we are in terms of spending in relation to the overall budget.
I actually have that later on in my agenda, Wayne.
Well, then why don't you move it up then?
So as part of construction administration later on in the agenda, we were going to update the committee that we've asked Agostini to begin the process of liquidating allowances and contingencies that remain within the contract. That's where a lot of the overage that's detailed in the VIP budget, or the underage that's detailed in the VIP budget comes from. So that will start the process of identifying where we expect to be in terms of the overall project budget as we begin to close out the job. We still see that trending in the $3.5 to $3.8 million range, which is a little bit lower because of the money spent on Radon. But the hope is that at the end of that process and before town meeting, we'll be able to give you a better update of where we stand overall in terms of the overall construction project.
Is it fair to say that you don't see any exposure for us going under $3.5 million?
I don't know that I have confidence answering that question right now, Wayne. I think that we have. I haven't double checked the numbers personally in a while, but I know previously we expected it in that general range as being the minimum that we would remain under budget, and
Right.
I think we've closed out the majority of the big ticket items related to the project.
Right. And my comment goes to there's no major work that is ongoing. All of the work that is contemplated is really punch list items or very minor change orders, like this check valve on the booster pump. So I'm not sure what else we would be spending money on, and retainage is already accounted for. So I'm having trouble figuring what additional exposure we would have, at least in relation to the conservative $3.5 million number.
Yeah, I think our official position, because Mary does the numbers more than I do, is the 2.9. We expect to be higher than the 2.9 that appears as the projected under budget in the VIP, and we'll have a better sense of what that number is after we work through the process with Agostini.
All right. That's
Within
not,
within a month?
the 2.9 is not the number I'm looking for. I'm looking for the verification of the, and it can be certainly a range. If it's certainly going to be a minimum of $3.5 million, I'm fine with that. But that's what I'm looking for.
And I think we definitely committed at the last meeting to giving you that number. But I think we reserved the right to work through the process with Agostini before we commit to that number, because we don't want to artificially commit to something and fail to meet it.
Well, we need to have it by the next meeting.
Correct. That was, I think, the goal that we set on our Thursday call.
Okay, good. All right.
Wayne?
Jim,
Yes. I just want to clarify in terms of the dates. Your next meeting is generally, it looked like around the 20th of October. Is that pretty much what the expectation would be?
yes.
So that we would be able to have some kind of pretty close to the final number in terms of where the project is coming in by that date.
I think we'll have at least the level of comfort that I just expressed to you, Jim, confirmed by that time. So I would expect that we would be able to tell you that it will conservatively be no less than, and then fill in the blank, and I think that number is likely to be $3.5 million.
Okay, but we're not going to jump the gun. We're going to wait for that time when you actually have closed that out. And I would like to ask the committee to think about how it would like to communicate that to the community.
I was thinking a police and fire parade, maybe some fireworks. I'm not sure. Maybe the DPW could get the dump trucks to run down Main Street. What did you have in mind, Jim?
Well,
Go ahead, top that.
no, I wasn't looking for a celebration. I would like to make a statement to the community. And certainly I believe that the ESBC has been driving the communication, and I would just like to urge you to come up with some effective communication.
Wayne, I think we should spend $3.5 million on a promotion campaign.
A party, right?
Yeah. Hey,
Yes, and it'll be in Aruba, right?
Never mind. Sorry for bringing it up. Just think about it for the next meeting.
Rich,
Jim
there have been
McCaffrey, I would-
some people in the community that have in fact been suggesting that if we have it, we should be spending it. So you're right on.
I feel as an advisor to the town, I should remind you all that you're being recorded.
Yeah, but
There you go.
nobody's signing here. Jim, I would probably normally suggest we do a statement for the front page of your website, and we do something on Facebook, and maybe we time it so that it's announced at a select board meeting.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's difficult. People will think, oh, we're getting money back. Well, they're not. They're not spending more taxes, but we can explain that.
Well, that part is not simply the amount, but what the actual impact is for folks. So yes.
Right.
I'm going to overcomplicate this, and it's great news. I just want to make sure that we think about how we communicate it. And my belief is that this initial communication should come from the SBC, which has been responsible for the project from day one.
Thank you.
Wayne,
did-
one
you
more
did-
thing on that, Wayne. If I think the other thing that we should make sure when we do that is that there were some of the improvements that we did along the way, the security improvements that weren't in the initial spec. I think we should make sure that, somehow that is the fact that we actually got more than we paid for, that we initially thought we were going to get.
That's a good point, Rich. We'll have to think about that. Certainly, all those security enhancements were not contemplated, although the MSBA did in fact contribute towards them. And certainly the radon was unforeseen, and we resolved that. And I'm trying to think if there are other things that we'll have to spend a little time thinking about that. But that's a good point. We'll make sure.
Pickleball courts.
Booster Club.
And any announcement would need to be coordinated with the school committee as well. So can't forget them. All right. Any other change orders?
No, those were the only change orders. The next thing that I had in the agenda was an update on the MSBA closeout process.
Okay. You were on the call the other day. Why don't you lead us through that?
So we met with the MSBA with several of the folks in the town. Wayne attended, as well as the treasurer, as well as a number of the other administrative folks within the town hall. We discussed the overall calendar for how the MSBA closeout process works. Essentially, there are 6 MSBA board meetings, which meet every other month, from the point at which you have final closeout with your contractor. Right now, we're probably on track for December or January as the final closeout to Agostini. So the target would be December 2021 for final closeout with the MSBA.
All right. Well, we have 14 more opportunities to meet like this then, don't we?
So Chris, at the end of 2021, is that when we get that not so giant check from them?
Yeah, whatever remains after the reconciliation process, keeping in mind that the MSBA does share in credits. So the initial pre-funding agreement would have been based on you spending all of the money in your budget. So if you spend less, then they take a share of those credits as well, which they update quarterly as they review the change orders in terms of what their participation level with the project is. So it's something that we like to remind clients, because often folks think, oh, I saved $4 million, but whatever your share with the MSBA is, the MSBA saved some of that $4 million.
And if I'm reading your spreadsheet in the VIP correctly, that there is a risk that they have really overfunded this project at this point.
Ew.
Potentially, that risk does exist. I can't speak to the details of that, but it is something that potentially could occur with considerable change orders.
Well, we don't have the information that answer that now, obviously, but in response to your comment, Diane, we will not be getting a big check.
No.
Period.
But
they've given us, we've received $19.9 million to date. That's probably likely almost all that we're going to see. If there's another payment, it's going to be really insignificant in comparison.
Correct. And that's what I was going to bring out. So, nobody likes to give money back to the MSBA, but they have given you over almost $20 million so far. So that they have participated up to this point in helping the town to fund the project.
Okay.
Okay.
The next
CHIP.
item I had, the CHIPS review. The package was submitted in August and is currently under review with CHIPS. We expect to hear something from them in October. I don't know if there's any update to that, Charlie.
Not that I'm aware of.
So we have been told that they're running somewhat behind in their review schedule or review timeline, as a lot of
That's a
organizations
permanent condition.
How many MSBA points are writing on CHIP certification?
Couple.
All
Two.
right. What's the risk, Charlie, in not getting certified?
Very, very slim. I don't think there's no indication we won't be certified.
All right.
It's really just a timing. It's hard to close these jobs out, and CHIPS is always one of the issues, and it can take a while. But I don't think we've certainly never had a project that got this far based on their preliminary reviews with problems. And sometimes they ask for more information. Sometimes they think the contractor hasn't documented adequately. But I think Agostini's been pretty good about it. So I think there's almost zero risk.
All right. So it's just really
It's just a time problem.
All right. Okay.
Wayne, it took us forever to get LEED certified for the library, way after it was opened.
I know. And frankly, I don't think really matters, but I wanted to hear from Charlie whether or not there was a financial risk associated with that. And if Charlie says it's nil, then it makes me feel better.
Yep.
But there is, I don't remember exactly what it is. I think it's ballparked around $1 million that comes with the CHIP certification in the overall process. So there is certainly reimbursement tied to it. So Charlie's saying not that there's no financial risk, but there's little chance that we don't get certified. And once certified, there's a financial component that's the result of that certification as part of I think it's part of the MSBA process.
Does the MSBA take a share?
That I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Sounds like we have time.
Not a separate share. I mean, in other words, they take whatever, they don't skim off the top of their own and their own reimbursement incentive points.
Okay,
They just take back overall some percentage of whatever doesn't get spent, but it isn't tied to any particular thing. It's just the overall number.
thank you, Charlie.
Okay,
So the other construction administration note I had was that the changes were submitted. These are the changes to the overall site plan that were enacted and approved by this committee over time, over the course of the job. Those were summarized and submitted to the planning board for review. And Rich, I believe you unanimously approved them.
Yes, we did. It was all set.
thank you, Rich.
No worries. It was all, documented along the way, so it was pretty easy to vote.
You must have been very persuasive. So thank you very much.
I echo it.
Okay, Chris, next.
And the next I have is just the last construction administration update. Within the invoice that you have from Agostini this month, there is retainage included. We're recommending, along with TAP A, that $5,000 be released to JDC, which was the demo contractor. We had been holding that related to some underground demo that they didn't complete while they were on site, and that they worked in collaboration with Dorenzo to complete. Dorenzo requested 30,000 and we granted 15 of that, largely due to holding some related to the tennis courts, as we talked previously. Releasing Stanley's retainage of $10,111.50, which closes out Stanley's contract. And NEIS, which I always get backwards. I believe NEIS, we have two NEISs. This one, I believe, is the one that provided the acoustical panels and the green screen in the steam room. The other NEIS is a casework manufacturer. And they asked for $8,000, which would also close out their contract. One thing to note with all of these retainage releases is that they don't include anything that are change orders that we're voting on today, such as the Radon. So Stanley still is going to be owed money related to closing out the Radon when that appears likely in next month's rec, as well as others that have previously been released, like Colony, and there's someone else, but the name escapes me. MB Kenny, they do still have a tiny amount of retainage that we need to release, but that will be tied to that will probably come out with the Radon,
right,
when that's billed. The following contractors also still have retainage to be released. Pavilion, which is the resilient flooring contractor. Pappas, which is the gym equipment. They have those two remaining wall panels. NB Kenny HVAC, Griffin Electric, Cape and Islands, Steel Co., which is the fencing sub, Central Nurseries, Northeast Interior Systems, which is the casework, the other NEIS, and Dorenzo, of course, because we're holding 15,000 this month.
Okay. All contractors that are still not quite wrapped up or just finishing up at this moment.
A lot of them have some minor punch list things that are just lingering, and we're trying to close out with them.
All right. So what about the question that Rich asked in relation to the note on the Agostini submittal, the monthly rec?
So there is a note that appears on, let me just find it quickly.
It's on the last page, isn't it?
Yeah, my notes here have everything, so it takes a little while to track down a specific invoice. So the note that Rich highlighted is that we noted a I don't remember the exact language that Mary used, but essentially when we reviewed the rec against the ProPay system. So we've Agostini's rec, which is based on approval based on completion, and then how we enter it into the MSBA system, which is based on the reimbursement. For a reason that we have yet to identify, we noticed that there's a small discrepancy between how much has been billed to base contract work versus how much has been billed to change orders. A possible explanation is that in release of retainage for something like Dorenzo, rather than lower Dorenzo's each individual change order line item, Agostini put a lump sum of the $15,000 that we're holding under Dorenzo's base contract line item, and then would have zeroed out everything under change orders. So it's possible that that shifting of money from base contract to change orders created an imbalance versus how the MSBA system recorded it, or it could just be there's a small clerical error between the two categories that needs to be further investigated and resolved. So as we've done previously in the VIP, we just we note that there's some reconciliation that needs to occur, and we continue to hunt and figure out the source of that discrepancy and eventually resolve it.
How much are we talking about, Chris?
I think it's around $13,000, but the important thing to note is that it's not, we're not concerned that we have overpaid Agostini with a note like that. It's purely an accounting reconciliation where we want to note it effectively for the MSBA so that when or if their auditors pick it up, they have an understanding of what happened and the eventual resolution of it, so that it smooths out the rough edges that can come up during the audit.
Okay, thank you.
Rich, did you have anything?
No, that was it. I just, when I see, it's something that is, they're looking at, I just want to understand what it's about.
Yep, absolutely. So, Chris, let's get that resolved for next month.
Yep,
All right.
we're working on it.
Okay. All right.
So I think all that remained was review of the invoices and minutes.
Kim, you're not online, so who can pull up the VIP?
I've got it here.
If that's okay.
It's on the screen.
Perfect.
All right, so the first one is Compass's invoice. I'm not playing favorites, it just happened to be first. For $17,288.
All right, go ahead.
One thing to note, we did execute Compass Amendment 5, which was the additional work for Radon this month. And we also executed TAP A Amendment number 9, which was their additional service for Radon that were voted on by this committee in July. Which is just following up with the paperwork based on the committee's vote.
All right, I make a motion that we approve the invoice for Compass for the month of August for the amount of $17,288.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Diane Germain, how do you vote?
Aye. Aye.
You don't get to, this is not the presidential election, just once. Just vote once.
Early and often.
Rich Nichols, how do you vote?
I'm going to mail mine in. Aye.
Clocko votes aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, I make a motion that we pay an invoice to TAPay for the month of August in the amount of $20,645.45.
So this includes radon remediation. So it's the $8,000 for radon, a small amount of the Amendment 8, I believe, is the acoustical testing, Charlie, related to chips. And the $2,700 reimbursement to TAP A for the cost for filing with chips.
All right.
I second that motion.
All right. It has been moved and seconded. Diane Germain, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rich Nichols, how do you vote?
Aye.
Wayne Clarko votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Yay. Last one. I make a motion that we approve the Agostini invoice for August in the amount of $147,901.14.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Diane Germain, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rich Nichols, how do you vote?
Aye.
Wayne Clarko votes aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Great.
There was one more invoice.
Yeah, there was an invoice that came in late that was not included with the VIP from GZA. We have not had a chance to review it yet. You certainly have the option to approve it. My quick look at it, I forget whether or not I opened it up as one of these. No, I don't think I did.
If you haven't reviewed it, Chris, it's not appropriate to bring to the committee.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it was this one for 931, which seems to be closing out their radon system recommendations, but I have not had a chance to review it.
And you need to tell us how this fits in with the overall proposal.
Correct. That's why it came up very late last week, and we didn't have a chance to give it our usual process.
All right. We have minutes, Kim?
Yes, we have minutes from August 25th.
Make a motion.
I read the minutes and I make a motion that we approve them. The motions for meeting minutes from August
August 25th.
25th.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Diane Germain, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rich Nichols, how do you vote?
Aye.
Wayne Clarko votes aye. Motion carries. All right.
Did it sound like October 20th is our next meeting?
Let's look at the schedule. So usually at this point, we ask, when will Agostini have their pencil rec in, and when will Compass have a chance to review it?
It seems to be taking a very long time lately. I would say we'll push to get it from Agostini on the 30th or the 1st, and then we'll have it reviewed by the 9th, and then hopefully get it back the following week. So the 20th is certainly possible.
All right, so I will be back, I believe on the 16th. So if the rest of the committee is available on the 20th, I would offer that up as our next date.
Yeah,
Good for
that
me.
works for me.
Me too.
All right.
Great. Motion to adjourn?
Are you gonna vote
Second.
twice on that?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Anything else that the committee needs to consider before we sign off?
No, not for me.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.